Welcome back to the second Faith on Friday. I apologize, my little sunglass marks there. I rode over to a local park just to get a little change of scenery from my backyard. I mentioned last week that I wanted to take the next several weeks. It may not be a full 8 weeks, given the context that I want to review season 1 of the show The Chosen. It is 8 episodes, but I don't think I want to do 8 weeks, but I might. It just depends on how these go. This first one's gonna be a little bit different. All of these reviews may be slightly spoilery. They probably will. So give that warning up front. You can watch this show on an app called VidAngel, which is on iOS, or Apple TV, Roku's, or download the app The Chosen directly to your iPhone or Android device, probably Google device as well, and actually watch the full season. You can also order DVDs. There's a lot of different ways to watch the show. If you just Google it, you'll be able to find the best way for you to watch it. So I hope that after this, you will go watch it yourself, and by the time we get into each review, you'll have got a chance to watch it as well. So you'll have your own opinions and your own thoughts, and you'll kind of know what I'm talking about. What I don't want to do with these reviews, this is a show based on the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John from the Bible. What I'm not really going to do, maybe just slightly sometimes, but I'm not really going to focus on is historicity. This is a show, and I'm glad they treated it as a show. They did write in extra dialogue. They did develop characters in such a way that they are not using just dialogue from the Bible and the limited amount of backstory that we have for the characters. They're creating a world, creating characters, giving them individual backstories, and giving them additional dialogue, making interactions that may not have happened, but to create characters. But they are staying true to the Gospels in a lot of ways. They actually even had a 3-person panel the director had with the script, kind of a joke, a priest, a rabbi, and an evangelical that would review the scripts, and I thought it was a lot of wisdom, and go over and give their opinions from their different faith backgrounds. What did we get right, or what do we not have right, and make little tweaks and adjustments, or sometimes just say, well, it's a show, we're gonna do it this way no matter what. So I respect that. It's what made it a good show. Even if you're not into the Bible, if you're not interested in that, you can enjoy this as a show if you'll just be open-minded to the spiritual undertones and to the Christian undertones. It is about Jesus and his disciples, the ones that he chose, so The Chosen. I want to dive right into the review, and then talk a little bit afterwards about what I liked and what I liked about the show, and just give a little context. So this episode 1, is going to focus on several characters from the Gospels: Mary Magdalene, Nicodemus, Simon and Andrew, Simon who became Peter, so Simon and his brother Andrew, and Matthew the tax collector. There's some other characters in there as well. Simon's wife, or Peter's wife, is going to be in this show pretty heavily. Nicodemus's wife. Some Roman characters are in the show, which is cool, and there's some really quirky, good characters there that take place with these Roman soldiers. But the show usually opens up with some kind of little flashbacky scene that will then relate throughout the episode. But they really start off heavily with Mary Magdalene, the one that Jesus cast demons out of. It opens up with her as a little girl, gives some backstory about her and her father, the loss of her father. Also goes on to some backstory about how she may have gotten the demons, or just the things that may have taken place in her life. What they're doing, and what they do with all these characters so well, is give them a fully fleshed out human character. And that's what I really loved. Besides the spiritual side of the show, is a lot of Christian media has a lot of times been like message driven at the expense of character, at the expense of development of real people. They're kind of these like what you would kind of cheesy, flat Christian characters, and they've got this faith. It's not super deep. Not all, but that sometimes tends to be like the message outweighs the art. And if you're gonna make art, if you're gonna make movies, make media, the message and the art have to intertwine, and they have to be good together. They have to work together, and they do a good job of that with Mary. We're introduced to her. We obviously see she's got what they're showing as a demonic possession or demonic oppression going on around her life. They also introduce Nicodemus. Nicodemus is going to be a Jewish Pharisee who was also a disciple, or hidden disciple, or sympathizer with Jesus in the Gospels. And there's a really great scene with them in the first season, this scene where Nicodemus meets Jesus later on, and which I thoroughly enjoyed and was a really powerful scene. But Nicodemus starts out, you can see the really heavy religious undertones, a lot of pride, but he gets charged to go and to exorcise this demon from this woman demons from this woman who's causing a lot of problems in this certain area of the city. He confronts her, he goes through his Jewish rites and ritual exorcism, and it's a really great exorcism scene no matter where you come from. It's not a horror movie exorcism, but even a mainstream movie with some sort of demonic or spiritual thing in an exorcism scene, it's really well done. So what I noticed was Nicodemus's religious attitude towards it. He comes in, he doesn't really want to be there, but then he does the rites and he's got the smoke and he's saying words. But then the demons speak back through Mary in this scene and they say, we're not afraid of you. You have no power here, teacher, which is a great setup for what's going to happen later in the episode. But it really strikes Nicodemus and you start to begin to see a lot of questioning because he has the religious background, but he also is truly someone who wants to know God and to see something that he believes God can do. And he actually says only God could do this, but realizing he has no power through his religious rite is humbling for him, which is a good place for all of us to start to be when we realize things are out of our control and they become very humbling to us. So that starts Nicodemus down a path. Then we get introduced to Simon and Andrew. Of course, the fishermen, the rowdy ones. Simon Peter is a rowdy one throughout Scripture and a very great person for us to study as he meets Jesus. He's around Jesus, but there's still a lot of Simon left in Simon. And but we get introduced to him. He's in a fight and he's gambling and he's cheating. He's in trouble with taxes is how he gets introduced to Matthew, the tax collector. And it's just setting up his life and tension in his home life, tension in his life in general, from all sides and all circumstances. They introduced Matthew, the tax collector. He is so quirky. It's a little bit weird at first. And then you begin to realize by the end of the season, this actor who portrays Matthew fleshes him out so well and gives him such a unique character. What's a little bit off-putting at first, they're kind of playing him as like with an OCD quality or an Asperger's kind of quality. So a little bit of like on a spectrum. And that's real. I mean, throughout time, people were going to have issues and have challenges and maybe mental challenges or whatever. And so they're giving all these characters such unique story and human development, making them a lot more real. So we get introduced to Matthew. He's very funny at times, a little bit sad at times, and quirky. So, and then there's interactions between Matthew and between Simon and Andrew that don't necessarily take place in the Gospels, but that's what I like about the show is that they're writing characters. So even if you're not into the Christian stuff, you could watch this as a show with an open mind and enjoy the character and the people and the human element of it. They lead on more with Mary. Mary is in a tavern, she's drinking, and she's basically at that low place. She wants to take her own life. She wants to end the suffering and the pain. And she kind of makes some little final gestures, goes out to a cliff, and when she's there, she sees a dove. She begins to follow that dove. She goes back to the tavern again. They serve her a drink as she's there. We finally get to see Jesus, meet Jesus, puts his hand on her hand, says, that's not for you. You know, that way of dulling your pain, that way of fighting the demons through alcohol or basically through substance and through distraction. That's not for you. And then you begin to see an agitation with her, like the presence in her, the demonic presence in her is agitated. Like in the Gospels, when Jesus meets the demoniac, the spirits right away recognize him, they become agitated. She goes outside, he follows her. She's been going by the name Lilith, which has a lot of background and context as well. As a kind of there's a figure named Lilith and kind of like, you know, kind of a history, a pseudo-history of biblical stuff. But anyways, he follows her and he says Mary, her real name. And that strikes her because no one would have known her real name in the context of the show. And then he begins to quote to her scripture her dad and her would say as a little girl. A scripture she tries to quote during the show, but the demonic presence won't really let her do it. And she recognizes something's happening, and he walks up to her, and he doesn't cast the demon out with the power. He claims her. He says, you are mine. And it's at that moment you're inferring and you're seeing that something leaves her. So it's Jesus' claim that you are mine, not let me fix this, but you are mine. You belong to me. When you belong to me, that is where the change happens. When you recognize that, when he claims you, that's where the change happens. So it's a quick little bit of a breakdown. What I like about the show, I like the cinematography. It's a little bit weird at first. It's very HD, especially on my television. and very interesting filtering with the cameras and camera movement, and you have to adjust to it. It's unlike other shows you've probably watched. You can kind of tell it doesn't have that Netflix and HBO original budget. Not in a bad way, not like it looks poor quality, but it's a little different at first, but as you adjust to it, it has a very cool look and a cool filming style to the show. I like that. I like how young all of these disciples are throughout the show. Jesus would have been 30, right there, young 30 years old. And most of the time in portrayals, Jesus' disciples are all like, they're geezers already. They're like, look old. Peter's like big old white beard and looks like he's in his 70s. And that just wouldn't have been right. I mean, the disciples were probably late teenagers, maybe in their 20s. Maybe Peter was around Jesus' age of 30, like maybe, because he was married already and was in a business. It's hard to know exactly, but they were definitely way younger than we normally see them portrayed. The ironic part is the actor who plays Jesus is in his 40s. He looks older than all of them. He does a great job, so no knocking to that, and they cast a great actor for the character of Jesus, but he does look a little bit older than everyone else, and he shouldn't really. And he's also a little bit taller too, and so Jesus probably should have been more of an everyman look. In a sense, he wouldn't have stood out as much. He definitely kind of stands over the disciples. He's a more prominent, when they're all together, you kind of, that's definitely Jesus right there. Classic long hair and a beard too. I would have preferred short hair, potentially, but a lot of people in the show have longer hair, whatever, just to throw it off a little bit. But that's just a small little thing. It's not a big deal, the actor's age. I mean, it happens a lot in movies. I mean, how many shows are about high schoolers, and you can tell these people are clearly not high schoolers. Look at the first Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire. Clearly was not a high schooler, right? So that's not a big deal. But the characters are so well developed even early on in this first episode, and that's why this review is a little bit longer. I'm kind of setting up what we're going to see as the show goes on. And a couple things that I noticed, that's not that I didn't like them, but I felt there was a couple really quick character developments in the first episode. Nicodemus has changed from like really hyper religious and really proud moments before he meets Mary, and then has changed all of a sudden, really questioning his own faith and questioning God's power. It seems a little quick in context of the episode, but I mean, it's the first episode, and maybe it could have had more time to develop and a couple little things in to help it develop that little shift in him a little bit better, or maybe he would have seemed so proud in the beginning, but had maybe another scene of him being a little bit questioning, even a little flashbacky scene of Nicodemus before his trip to Capernaum, being a little bit more questioning of his faith, potentially. And so then the pride seems like a cover-up, and then we see the development. Just a thought, my thoughts. And then there's the interaction between Matthew and his Roman guard that becomes very interesting as the season goes on, but their first interaction in the show is kind of like a typical, you can see Romans don't like Jews and Jews don't like Romans, and it seems a little harsh for how they develop the character later. So, I mean, just small things, but an awesome show. Please go and watch it. Find it on a platform, watch it through so these reviews will line up more. I'll try to make them a little more concise and also bring a little bit more structure to the reviews, but this is the first episode, and I just wanted to dive into it and get started on it. I'm developing this channel, developing my voice on the channel as I do it, and I'm figuring it out as we go. So that's about all the time I want to take for this to start with. Check the show out so we can walk forward with it more. I hope you've heard a few of my thoughts and it makes you curious. And then we'll be a little more technical as things go on, and writing down some more notes about what I like from the show, and what will be interesting to me for the future of going forward with this. So anyways, thank you so much for checking this out again. A little different scenery, change of background, and I really hope to walk through this with you in the weeks to come, and I hope you get to watch the show and enjoy it as much as I have. Have a great day. God bless.